That goes into the second thing that people are going to be surprised about: how much this costs. Unfortunately, a lot of the time in people's initial consultations and in their conversations with their lawyers, they do not immediately get an idea, or they do not listen to what their lawyer told them as to how much this case is going to cost. I try to be very transparent as to how much your divorce case or paternity case or whatever it is going to cost you. My name's Ed Emmerich. I am a marital and family law attorney in Central Florida. I've been practicing family law for approximately 11 years at this time. I grew up in Central Florida, in Claremont specifically. I went to Eastridge High School, which sits less than a mile from the office I'm in right now. And I am the managing partner of Emmerich Family Law Firm. We wanted to start this page, or start these videos, or this video series. I'm not really sure what it's even going to be yet, in order to raise awareness for folks about some of the intricacies of family law. We want to talk about some things that I think would be helpful for everyone if they had enough knowledge about to talk to their legislators. We're going to cover some of that. And in addition to that, seemed like everybody was doing it. So we wanted to give it a shot ourselves and see what would come of it, and start a dialogue with the people that we represent and with the people we know in our community. Okay.
All right, so talk about 3 things that surprise people in divorce most often, of the divorce process.
3 things that surprise people, or at least that consistently surprise people in divorce cases or in other variations of marital and family law cases, are going to be namely the things that you imagine are going to surprise people. Number 1, how long it takes. People do not get divorced in 2 weeks. They do not get divorced in 2 months for the most part. Going through this process, together with all of the disclosures that you have to provide through mandatory disclosure or through what the other side requests of you in your financial case, or even as it pertains to your children, it takes a great deal of time. Divorce cases pursuant to a rule of general practice and judicial administration are supposed to take place in 6 months. Paternity cases approximately the same. It is rare for a case to be done in 6 months unless the two of you are able to come to an agreement and resolve that case. Then, in addition to that, most of the time, even though people do end up resolving their case, they have some variation of major event in their divorce case before they get there, whether that be a temporary relief hearing or mediation or something of that nature. So, particularly if you're in a circumstance where you expect to have a highly contested divorce or family law matter, you need to be ready to buckle up and hang on to this thing for 18 months to 2 years. If you have a truly nasty family law case, which seems to be what I get the most of, we're going to be friends and colleagues for between 2 and 5 years. The longest divorce case I've ever had, to go into that, I was not the first attorney on. So as you can imagine by me telling you that I've only been practicing for approximately 11 years, was a 13-year divorce that happened in multiple counties. Now, to be fair, these people appeared to get back together and then split up while their divorce was pending. But there was multiple hearings, multiple petitions for child support, temporary orders and things of that nature associated with child support and alimony. And I believe by the time I resolved that case, which would have been 21 or 22, the case was started in 07. I think they actually filed a petition for dissolution of marriage in 07. Now, that's an outlier. Stuff like that doesn't happen very often. However, I will say that I've had plenty of cases that go on 2, 3, 4 years. Usually, that is because at the outset of the case, there is a lot of filing and things of that nature, and nothing really happens. And then ultimately we start getting hearings and things of that nature, and you are able to compel the discovery that you're looking for, and you're otherwise able to get the case to start moving forward. And after that, there's another pause a lot of the time. So these are things that can be avoided if you stay on top of your case. So that goes into the second thing that people are going to be surprised about: how much this costs. Unfortunately, a lot of the time in people's initial consultations and in their conversations with their lawyers, they do not immediately get an idea, or they do not listen to what their lawyer told them as to how much this case is going to cost. I try to be very transparent as to how much your divorce case or paternity case or whatever it is going to cost you. I try to give people information associated with what things are going to increase or decrease that cost depending on the circumstances in their case. If you are litigating a case for 2 years, you can expect that you are going to spend $70,000 or $100,000 without really even that much going on. Just because all of the work that the lawyer's doing behind the scenes, all of the discovery that's going to be associated with that case, you're going to keep having these little mini hearings because the judge is going to be asking what's going on, why is this case taking 2 years? You'll have case management conferences, potentially pretrial conferences and things of that nature during that time frame. And so, although this makes perfect logical sense, it does tend to surprise people. The longer your case goes on, the more money you're going to spend on it. And so, although people tend to be surprised, I'm going to tell you that the expense of a divorce case is one of the surprising things. In addition to that, I think that the expense of divorce cases has increased exponentially even in the past 5 years. Lawyers' hourly rates have raised significantly just since I started practicing, but certainly in the last 5 years, we've seen a common hourly rate of $300 to now the common hourly rate is $400. That's a 133% increase. It may not seem like much when you're talking about big numbers, but as a percentage, that is a significant increase in price. And even though the average right now might be around $400 an hour, there are plenty of people that charge much, much more than that. We see hourly rates at $550, at $600, at $700 an hour. In South Florida, you'll see plenty of them at $1,000 an hour. And so that aspect is something that tends to surprise people, especially if it's their second divorce or third divorce. I've had folks that were paying $100 an hour in their first or second divorce in the 1990s, even in the early 2000s. There were people that were billing at $100 an hour. But this is the state of it as we are today. In addition to that, the presumption of equal time sharing, the alimony statute, some of the changes to the legislature and the way they wrote up our equitable distribution, these things are causing circumstances where more people are getting expert witnesses, and we're required to get these expert witnesses. One of the benefits of some of these legislative changes and the internet and things like that is more of the family law practitioners are aware of what the law says, and so they're not just going to court winging it. But one of the downsides is, for some of the things that we commonly need to do, like imputation of income, we need to have an expert witness for that. That's obviously going to cost you money. There years ago, you might have been able to go in front of the judge and say, look, they made $70,000 2 years ago. There's no reason why they can't work. And the judge might just say, hey, $70,000 is how much this person should be making. And so we're going to base the child support and the alimony and things of that nature on $70,000. Well, the case law and some of the other things that have happened associated with what the law is and the state of the law today would indicate that you can't really do it that way. You can't just use their past income to impute income on people. You have to show that there is a job available to them that they are qualified for within a reasonable geographic area of where they currently live, that is available to them today in order to impute income. And in order to do that, you can't just show up to court with an Indeed posting, because that doesn't mean the person can get the job just because it's on Indeed right now. We don't even know if that job's really available, because this morning that job could have been taken. In addition to that, you have the fact that an Indeed posting is hearsay. It's an out-of-court statement made by somebody that's not then testifying, offered for the truth of the matter asserted, which is the definition of hearsay. So you can't use that anyway. You wouldn't be able to get it into evidence even if you wanted to. It's not a reliable document, so you have to have an expert come in. That circumstance is coming up for more than one thing. And so your case ends up costing more money if you have to go to court. Now, in an ideal circumstance, you won't have to go to court. People can be reasonable and say, yes, I made $70,000 2 years ago. You know, I've had X, Y, or Z emotional or physical problem, but I'm ready to go back to work. There's no reason why I can't make that. However, that is happening less and less. That's another reason the expense of divorce litigation has gone up, or any other variation of family law litigation, is because people are not settling cases in the way they once were. And so the second thing that tends to surprise people is going to be the cost of their divorce or family law litigation. The third thing that I think tends to surprise people in family law litigation, and obviously there's plenty of stuff, but since we're limiting the list to 3, I'm going to go here. Though the law is seemingly somewhat clear, there's a presumption of equal time sharing in the state of Florida. There's a presumption that all of your assets and debts are going to be divided equally. All of your marital assets and liabilities are going to be divided equally. The alimony statute has changed to include a somewhat formulaic equation to determine how much the alimony is going to be and for how long. Even though all 3 of those things exist, still, people cannot agree on them. People decide that they are going to move for extraordinary relief, such as an unequal distribution of the marital assets and debts, alimony at a rate that is greater than what the statute says, or for a duration greater than what the statute says, child support an amount that is greater than the guidelines, time sharing other than 50-50, relocations out of state. All of those things are coming up somewhat regularly. So when you go into this circumstance, you might think, well, there's a presumption of equal time sharing. There's a presumption everything's going to be split 50-50. It shouldn't be too difficult for us to go in there and figure this out. Well, A, that assumes that the other side is going to think logically and reasonably. However, you are going through a incredibly emotional and personal experience. So expecting everyone to look at this from a cold and calculated position is not, it's not practical. It's not going to work that way, unfortunately. And so I'd say the third most surprising thing is that this is not nearly as easy as it may seem. You know, the stuff you look at on the internet, the stuff that you hear from your friends, that is not the way it really goes. You know, if your buddy and their wife were able to settle their case out of court without using lawyers, and, you know, they agreed that she would keep her car and he would keep his car, and that he would keep the debts in his name and she would keep the debts in her name, and they were able to get divorced in 3 weeks, that may be true. They may have been able to accomplish that, but that has no bearing whatsoever on your case, especially if you have a house when they didn't. You have children and they didn't. One of you cheated on the other one. One of you has been hiding money from the other one. You guys have had domestic violence in your relationship. One of you has a substance abuse problem. All of these different factors come up that make your case not resolve in the way, you know, your buddy and their wife resolve their case.